All right, welcome back to the Just Browsing podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your co-host Zach here with Matt again, and today is the space episode.
Space.
Matt and I decided that one of the topics we would like to discuss on this podcast is space, and naturally, knowing literally nothing about it other than what we read on the internet, we decided we would host an entire podcast about it.
Well, I think, obviously we've used movies as a lot of references, and so I think we're going to bring in some movies as, realistic possibilities as a reference and
yeah. So what we're going to do is
space.
Half of this is going to be like cool space stuff we pulled off the internet and our favorite space movies. So I don't know how you want to kick us off. If you want to just start with one of the movies and we'll kind of relate it to some of the facts that we pulled off. What?
I think so. I'll just list the 4 movies that I want to use. So in terms of, I guess, time, Apollo 13 is one of my all-time favorite space movies. One, it's based on a true story. Sure, the movie is a little bit, more dramatic than what happened in real life, but any space accident is dramatic. Space accidents you don't come back from normally. That's the one spot in, can't even say this world because you're not on the world or around the world, but so Apollo 13 to me is a fascinating story.
I haven't seen this one in a really long time. I was just looking it up just to remind myself. But that's the one Tom Hanks is in.
Tom Hanks is in
by
it,
Ron
yeah,
Howard.
and Kevin Bacon and.
So Tom Hanks, Bill Paxton, Kevin Bacon, Gary Sinise, Ed Harris. Damn, that's a lot of great actors in that. I haven't seen this one in a really long time. Came out in 1995.
I mean, it's phenomenal. I mean, it's one of those it's one of those things that we know more about our, the known galaxy than we do about our own oceans, which is a terrifying fact.
That's a terrifying prospect
because we've only been, we've been in space for the last 60 years. We've been on Earth for the last 3,000 years. At least in regards to dated history.
Yeah.
Not saying 3,000 years ago we had submarines and could explore the oceans.
I know what you're saying. Like, in terms of exploring the oceans or space, that has only been like a tiny blip in human history that we've been able to do that. And it really is when you hear that fact of we know more about the surface of the moon than we do about the deepest part of our own oceans. I think that's what freaks me out more. Like we were talking a little bit before the podcast started about how our oceans scare me more than space does, and I feel like it should be the other way around, but for whatever reason it's not. It's just because deep in the deepest parts of our ocean where you can't see anything, where it's so dark, the sun, it's so deep the sun can't even penetrate the water down that far and it's just pitch black. I think I would rather be in a tiny capsule in space than a tiny capsule at the bottom in that part of the ocean, because in my imagination, what's sitting right outside the window for me is this terrifying monster. But when in space, you could actually you can see for the most part outside what's happening. But I think it's just my imagination gets the best of me, and it just places these terrifying monsters out there, which are most likely not even there. But it's just not being able to see them is the worst part. But that's the thing,
we don't know if they are there or not there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it can become more terrifying. Is there's new sea species that are found every single day by fishermen that are, and they're not even in some of the deepest parts of the ocean. Yeah. They're in deep parts, but they're not
they'll just pull shit out of the ocean sometimes, and they'll just be like, we don't know what this is.
Right, and then everyone's like, oh, it's a new species of fish. And they're like, oh, it's super venomous. Or they're like, oh, that thing spontaneously combusts in water. So it's just a live explosive fish.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, wait, what? And they're like, we don't know anything about it, though.
Yeah. And that's the scariest part is even the scientists who's that's their job, and the biologists and stuff to catalog this stuff and name it and study it. They're like, we've never seen that.
Right. Well, and then we have the Hubble telescope in space, though, that's looking off into distant galaxies billions of years away.
Yeah. To me, that's less scary. I don't know why, but it's I would just rather take my chances on a spacecraft hundreds of thousands of light years away than go down to the bottom of the ocean. I don't know why. I just would rather do that.
I would rather do that.
It's something about my psyche. I don't know.
I think I would much rather, I think it would be cool. One, when you're at the bottom of the ocean, you just see darkness.
Yeah.
When you're going to space,
You're
you can
seeing a
literally
lot of crazy
see,
shit, and it's beautiful.
And-
it seems like it'd be serene and beautiful.
Well, you leave out of the Earth's atmosphere, and you can literally see how big our
vast,
our world is. And I mean, for all you flat earthers out there, maybe you need to schedule a trip to space because the Earth ain't flat.
Dude, we got to do. Here's a question for you. So, Richard Branson with Virgin Galactic? Mm-hmm. I don't know where they're at with this, but a couple years ago I read that they were planning on becoming the first company to do these commercialized space flights where you basically get on like half plane, half rocket ship, and they take you up into the upper atmosphere, and you're like kind of in space, but not all the way in space.
Right. You're like, I thought that was like 60,000 feet. So you're like double the normal flying out.
It's like whatever height they have to get to where you experience weightlessness like you do in space.
Right.
And it only lasts for a few minutes, but you can literally look down on the Earth and see like the curvature of the Earth and look off into space. And you read a bunch of these astronauts who have gone up into space and come back, and a lot of what they say is like being up there and looking down on our planet from space and seeing like how beautiful but like how small and like delicate our planet is just gives you, when you come back, you have this totally different outlook on life. And I really want to experience that at some point. I don't know if I'm ever going to be lucky enough or rich enough to do that, but I think that would be one of the coolest feelings ever, to just come down and like, I feel like it would be, you would come back down here and be like, the shit that we get so worked up about down here doesn't matter. I think that's what they're trying to say, is like, once you're up there, you're like, this all seems so insignificant once you see it from like the bird's eye view, That's what I find so cool about it.
I mean, I would love to go to space. If someone offered me a chance to go to space tomorrow, depending on what I have to do in space, like if they're like, hey, you're going to space and you're never coming back, I'd be like, well, I'm going to hesitate a little bit. Hey. All right, so does anyone want a 5-month-old dog? She's a mixed breed, beautiful looking dog.
Good at interrupting podcasts.
A real pain in the butt, but I love her. No, so going back to if I would go to space, yes, in a heartbeat. I would go tomorrow. But I do hesitate a little bit just because, you're truly going into the unknown.
Would you, so you would do the Virgin Galactic flight of like the seeing the space for, 15 minutes or whatever it is. Would you volunteer to be on one of the first missions to go colonize Mars if they said, Matt, we can get you there with the materials for you to set up, with 20 or 50 other people, whatever, to set up this colony, but we can't come get you. It's a one-way trip. You're going to live on Mars for the rest of your life.
I think I would have to be at a point in my life where I'd never see my family again. Like,
yeah,
either all my family's dead,
yeah,
which obviously no one wants.
Yeah.
Because hopefully
it'd be hard to have any attachments to Earth.
No, and then people are like, well, why wouldn't your whole family go? I'm like, well, the whole point of colonizing is not to have the same bloodline, Well, there's 50 people from the same family out of 75 of us, so slim pickings for them,
yeah,
but good pickings for us.
Because I was reading, I want to look up this dude, like years ago. I think we were still in high school. I was driving around listening to the radio, and they were interviewing this guy who it was like late at night. They're doing like this long form interview. And this guy was like an older astronaut, and he was going through the trials with NASA to be on one of the first colonization missions to Mars. And what was kind of crazy, and what I wanted to bring up too, is like, they don't just maybe at some point it will be to where it's just like any rich person or any person who's smart or whatever or brings value, they'll just take. But right now, you basically have to be a superhuman. You have to be like one of the smartest people on the planet and also like incredibly physically fit.
Oh, yeah.
So astronauts are like these superhuman people. Like they have
a lot of them are Air Force.
Yeah, they have to have all of the gifts that you could have as a human being to be chosen to go on that mission. Because they need someone up there who is not only incredibly smart and quick on their feet and able to solve problems, but also can physically survive such a trip. So this guy that was doing the interview was talking about how, now he was in like, I don't know how old this guy was, 60s, maybe even like late 60s. And he was saying the frustrating part for him is he was trying to now pass the physical requirements to make this trip to go to Mars. But what he was saying was, when he was younger, like 20 or 30 years ago, he was trying to do the same thing, and they said he didn't have enough degrees in such and such field or whatever, and he wasn't as qualified academically as they needed him to be. So what he did is he went back to school, got all the degrees. He ended up with like PhDs in like multiple fields or whatever, like super genius. And then by the time he did all that, he came back and they're like, well, now you're a little too old physically. Now we don't want to take you. And so he was like, what the fuck? Like, this was his dream for his whole life, is he wanted to do this. And it was just insane listening to this guy tell this story, because he was talking about it was going to be a one-way trip to Mars. I mean, it's like they don't, coming back. They're going to get you up there, but that's it. You're staying forever. Like, you can't come back. They can't come get you and come back before you're dead. Like, we'll have that technology at some point, but you're going to be long gone by the time that happens.
Well, and that bring me into
it's crazy.
My next space movie would be The Martian.
Yeah, okay, so that would be a good segue into The Martian. The Martian's pretty good. I mean, I like The Martian.
People go, The Martian's kind of boring, and I go, well, I don't think The Martian is boring. It's not necessarily a space movie. I'm like, you're talking about a guy who wasn't deserted. You know, a space accident happened, and he got stuck
stranded
on a
there.
planet by himself.
Yeah.
On a planet. This isn't an island where you can get from one side to the other side. This is a planet where this dude had to plan for what? He was there at least over a year and a half.
He was there for like over a year, I think. I forget exactly now how long it was.
But like, you know, that's a realistic possibility when we start exploring with humans on Mars.
Because we're already exploring with rovers and stuff there.
Right,
now.
and we've been there
today.
We've been there, you know, I think since the 80s maybe? We landed like a rover.
I'm not sure when we got the first rover up there, but we've been on Mars for a while with technology.
Right, and it becomes one of those...
It's only a matter of time before people are up there.
Right, and people are already planning on it.
Yeah.
You know, Elon Musk, who I know is one of those... Like,
he's going to get us there, dude.
He says he's going to do something.
That crazy motherfucker's going to get us there.
I mean, watching all of SpaceX, I go, yeah, he's taking us to Mars. But like... The fact that The Martian was made, I go, this is the most realistic space movie probably in our lifetime.
Yeah.
To where I could see maybe when we're, 30 to 50 years from now, we could actually have people land on Mars and walk out there and try and figure out if that planet could be habitable or was inhabited at some point. Because I've read conspiracy theories and shit that, the human race used to live on Mars. And then we got wiped out there, but somehow, and they're fucking.
We'll save that for the conspiracy episode.
But they go all over the place.
I think it is a pretty much agreed upon fact that the astronomers and scientists now agree that Mars used to have a habitable atmosphere.
Right.
And they found evidence that they used to have water and stuff like that, and it just experienced like the runaway greenhouse effect, and now it's this barren planet with no atmosphere, but it used to have one is what their theory is now. So that's not really like that far of a stretch to imagine maybe hundreds of millions of years ago there was life up there. Right. Yeah, The Martian is a really cool one, and I think it's one of the most grounded space movies ever because it's really all about, like, the guy who wrote that book that it's based on, he centered it all around like what would a scientist do to like MacGyver his way out of this situation. Right. So it's like a scientist's like wet dream of like watching some guy just like he says in the movie, I'm gonna have to science the shit out of this. Yeah. Just like figure out how to grow his own food, with his own crap, like make his own little greenhouse in the little area and everything. And that it's a cool. I'm conflicted about The Martian because I like watching it. I think it's a very watchable movie, but it's not one of my favorites. And I wasn't as high on it as a lot of people were, like when it came out. Because I think Matt Damon won like a Golden Globe for Best Actor and stuff. Like it kind of surprised me how successful it was. I mean, it's a good movie. Don't get me wrong, but I've just liked other space movies more. But I do think it's a really cool idea. Like the idea of that story of just what the fuck would you do if you got stranded up there?
Right.
And your crew left you, and you're like, all right, I'm the only person. I'm the only living human being on this entire planet. Now I have to figure out how to survive until they come get me. Well, and step one is even just letting people know he's even alive because they think he's
how do you
dead.
communicate with a world
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
however
that's-
many hundreds of thousands of miles away.
Right. What did they say? It was like 2 years away or something,
Yeah.
space travel wise, or a
So
year.
he's got to like signal to the satellites that are orbiting Mars that hey, there's a person here. It's like an SOS on an island.
Right.
you
He had
know?
to, he had to be smart enough to go dig up an old. I don't know what you'd call it. It had to have been like a probe
Yeah.
that was there.
And get it to start transmitting signals
yeah,
or
and
something.
the
yeah.
JPL had and.
Yeah.
It's JPL? Yeah, Jet Propulsion Lab.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And, yeah, I mean, I love The Martian. It's not my favorite sports movie.
That'd be weird. If
That
it
would
was
be a
your favorite
weird sports movie. But it's not my favorite space movie. But I think it's, in terms of space movies out there right now, it's the most realistic possibility.
Yeah.
In terms of space exploration. We've been to the
Yeah.
moon. Now, I'd love if we could go back to the moon. I think that'd be great.
yeah.
Because why not?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the Americans are still the only people that have ever landed on the moon.
I think so. I think you're right.
Put feet on the moon, despite people saying it's fake. I mean, that'll be a whole nother
I was
story
going to say,
too. Because,
save that. Tab that one for the
'cause
conspiracy podcast.
So I read a little bit about that today, and I'll just do a real quick thing. Someone compared the space landings, the moon landings, the first time we saw it, with like the graphics and everything,
yeah.
to CGI from the 80s, and they go, and you still think the space, the moon landings was faked? They go, look at the graphics from this compared to CGI in the 80s. And they're like, the moon landings weren't faked. And I'm like, that's a good point, because CGI in the 80s was dog shit.
Did you hear the conspiracy theory that the moon landing was faked, and it was faked and filmed by the filmmaker Stanley Kubrick, the guy who did The Shining and like
I've
2001: A Space
I've
Odyssey?
heard a
Have you
lot
about
of it.
that?
Yeah,
That-
because
that's a common.
we were in
theory.
a space race with Russia. It was,
Yeah.
the height
And it
of
was
the
like-
Cold War, and
Yeah, I guess the whole point was to like fake that we had been there to like
right, because then it deters the Russians.
deter the
from
Russians or something. I don't
being
know.
successful.
we could not go down that
No.
rabbit hole right now.
No,
You wanna hear a
because
couple
space
cool-
will never be in the topic.
You want to hear a couple cool things I learned about the science behind The Martian? Because I looked up a couple things from Neil deGrasse Tyson. I'm not sure how much you've heard that guy talked or watched any of
I've
his
watched a
videos
little
or
bit.
anything. Really cool dude. He's been on Joe Rogan a couple times and had some really fascinating conversations. But he was saying that because when he watches space movies, he watches it like an astrophysicist. He's like, okay, I'm watching this like a scientist. And he said a couple of the things that he picked up on in The Martian. And one thing that he corrected me. I thought I had read a couple years ago when The Martian came out that the one thing that was too much of a stretch in that movie is that big storm that happens at the beginning that literally causes him to get stranded and they think he's dead. I thought I read somewhere where they were like, there are no storms like that on Mars because it doesn't have an atmosphere. So I was like, okay, that's kind of crazy. They just made up the whole storm part. Like, that's not even possible. But he was saying, I guess it is possible that you get, like, small dust storms. He said they'll see, like, dust devils and stuff like that. But he goes, the atmosphere is so lacking and you'll get like a little bit of dust blowing here and there, but like nothing. It's not like the hurricane force winds that
stabilize a full blown storm.
it's not gonna like rip off a satellite and slam it into a grown man and send him flying like they show in the movie and stuff. So I was like, okay, I'll go with them on that. You got to have the initial like conflict of like, okay, now he's trapped here and here's what is he gonna do. So that's a cool way of like getting it done. I can live with that. But a couple other things he said that he noticed was, I guess, if you look carefully in the movie, like anytime he drops something while he's on Mars, it drops like a little bit slower to the ground than it would here on Earth because the gravity on Mars is like, I think, a quarter of what it is on Earth or something. I'm not sure of the exact specific number, but if he like drops a wrench or whatever, it like kind of falls slowly to the ground. He thought, like, as a scientist, that was kind of a cool addition because like they paid close enough attention that like, hey, it's not going to fall like it would on Earth. Let's make sure it looks at least somewhat like it would look on if you were doing this on Mars or whatever. And then he was saying another thing. There's moments where he like picks up these giant, heavy like canister things and big pieces of equipment, and just like kind of hoists them off this truck and like pulls them down. He was saying like you think as you're watching it that the reason he's able to do that is just because he's like some jacked like some jacked astronaut guy who's just like really fit and really strong. But what he's saying is like, the reason why he's able to lift giant heavy things like that, probably beyond what he would be able to lift on Earth, is again because of like gravity is a
assist.
quarter of what it is. So like think about how much you could throw on the bench press and lift on Mars.
Well, it's like lifting in
versus here
water.
Yeah, it's like so there's way less resistance, and you can just hoist up heavy shit and carry it that here on Earth you would never have a chance at being able to do. So I was like, I thought that was kind of cool little tidbits that he was saying. Like, here's what I noticed as a scientist, because I just watched it as like a movie fan. You know, I don't know any of the science.
Well, so I just looked up. The Martian was set in the year 2035. So 15 years from now is when they, set that movie. So maybe storms could be like that in 15 years. Maybe an atmosphere starts to, to develop again. I mean, it's a movie. It's not happened, and I don't think it's
Like I
going to
said,
happen for the next 50 plus years.
The storm part doesn't really bother me. I mean, if you're a scientist, you're like, technically, there are not storms like that on Mars. I mean, like, okay, fine. We're not making a documentary about Mars. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
It's a movie. We're here to be entertained.
It's a true sci-fi movie. It's not based on true events.
Like, they're taking the grounded science and just expanding upon it a little bit, which is kind of what another movie that's a favorite of ours. I won't jump ahead. Go through yours. So yours was Apollo 13 and The Martian.
Well, so I was just going to go through the list of what I think is the most realistic in terms of, could happen in our lifetimes. And, Apollo 13 obviously happened and is old news, but it's a great space movie. And it brings up that light of it's still terrifying. You don't know what could go wrong in space.
Yeah.
And, so then The Martian, I think, is the most realistic. And I think, after that, I would say I like Passengers. I think it's kind of dumb. Like, it's not like the storyline is like, hey, we're just flying on a spaceship to inhabit a new planet.
Yeah.
But one dude, technology fails one dude, and then he ruins someone else's life. Yeah. But I like it because that's a very real possibility. If we get that technology, it's going to fail. Someone's going to end up like that. It's going to fail for one person.
Do you ever think about the world of like Passengers? And I don't know how far in the future that's set from our time, but like really far, I would imagine. But do you ever think about, so by the time Chris Pratt's character and Jennifer Lawrence's character are on that ship heading to whatever planet it's called that they're going to go inhabit, whatever like company it is who has designed that whole spaceship and everything has worked out most of the kinks of that travel to that new planet. But have you ever thought about what would Passengers look like if it was like the first space travel to that planet? Like who are the poor saps who volunteered to be like, I'm gonna be the first one to put myself cryogenically to sleep or whatever and travel 150 years through space to some other planet. Like, think of all the shit that went wrong on the first mission. If the one in Passengers we're saying is probably like the millionth mission they've done, and it's still being fucked up all the time. Like, there's just so many things that could go wrong.
When I couldn't find when, the actual movie was set, but what I have been reading is that it, they're estimating could be set closer to the year 3000.
Wow. So, like, way ahead.
I'm
imagining it's going to take us a long time to get to that, unless there's some
well, you got to think
radical change in the
you got to think the front of their spaceship is like a shield that literally destroys
the whole thing's like
meteors.
This cool spiral spinning spaceship thing that has like a shield on the front to
it's a
deflect
space
like
cruise
asteroids
ship that you're supposed to live on for
like months. Like they were supposed to
wake up like 6 months.
Yeah, and live on it for 3 to 6 months or something, and like live and
then
eat,
go
play,
inhabit,
work out,
and then like the captain gets sent back to Earth to pick up more people.
Yeah,
and I think it's a good space movie that can show what can happen in space and also the loneliness in space. I mean, if you're alone in space, on Earth, there's people around you, whether it's a couple 100 miles or a couple 1,000 miles away, there's people around you.
Yeah.
In space, you go, I am alone until some alien comes and scoops me up, or some human comes in 2+ years, or however long it takes. I am alone.
I think that's why the best part of Passengers is not the space travel part of it. The best part of it is the psychological study of like loneliness and what would happen if you thought you were gonna travel on this spaceship, make it however many hundreds of years to this other planet, wake up, and it would have been a blink of an eye for you, and you're gonna set up this brand new life, and then something goes wrong midway and you wake up and now you have to basically live out the rest of your life because you can't be put back to sleep in the pod. You have to live out the rest of your life on this spaceship totally alone. I think that's the best part of Passengers, is like the study of the psychological effects of what would a person do faced with that much loneliness. Because for the first time when he wakes up, he's awake for like an entire year before he decides to, spoiler alert, wake up Jennifer Lawrence's character. And it's like, you would think that, you know, I'm one of those people that I'm an introvert. I kind of enjoy solitude, but I think anyone would crack given that long. I mean, he makes it a year. I kind of wonder, like, how long would it take before you just were like, I have to wake someone else up to have someone to talk to. And he makes it a full year. And he's like, and then there's a line later in the movie where eventually Lawrence Fishburne's character, the captain, is awake and everything, and she's like screaming at him. She's like, "It's murder. He woke me up, and now I'm basically cursed to live out my life and die on this thing before we ever get there." And he's like, the drowning man is always gonna reach up for someone else to pull them down with, because he's so desperate to be above the surface. Like, that's just, he's like, I don't know what to tell you. It's human nature. I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, yeah, making it a year, I don't think I could make it a year alone.
Like, how long do you think realistically? And what's kind of interesting too is with this whole like COVID quarantine stuff is I saw some clever tweet like at the very beginning of all this when we were like just a few weeks in instead of being months in, and they were like, a lot of people are right now figuring out if they're psychologically fit to go into space, because in space you're going to be in tight rooms for long periods of time with not a lot of other people to talk to and not a lot of things to occupy your time with. And like, how well are you going to handle that psychologically? Some people are going to be like, fine, I can handle this for a really long time.
99.9%.
Other people are going to be like,
fucked.
going to go fucking nuts. Because people are going nuts, you know, during COVID quarantines, and we're sitting in here with our leather couches and air you can breathe.
Right. And you can go outside.
You can go outside. You
still
can
go to the
Uber Eats,
grocery
Taco
stores.
Bell to your fucking house.
Internet.
TV, internet, Netflix, like all that shit. And people are still like bored out of their fucking minds. So it's just kind of an interesting psychological study. That's why I like Passengers more than a space movie. It's more of like a what happens in isolation to human beings.
And I think it showed the dark side too. I mean, you know, he attempted to commit suicide and realized he didn't want to. He wanted to live it out, which I think, you know, like you compared it to COVID. I mean, I don't want to get political. I don't want to go into COVID, but that's a true thing. People aren't realizing the true facts of this. People losing their jobs and staying home and being quarantined. People are killing themselves because they don't have
They don't see any like hope.
They don't see hope.
Light at the end of the tunnel.
And that, you know, Passengers is exactly... Not exactly, because the guy willingly got on. No one here willingly wanted to be in quarantine.
But he also didn't willingly sign up to be stuck by himself on a spaceship.
Right.
For like
I mean,
100 years.
but it's the same, like you said, it's the same concept of he's by himself, so how can you psychologically keep yourself alive? And
at first, like, I love how they show the whole progression of like, at first, it's fucking dope. He's like, all right, I'm going to go to the gym, play basketball by myself. I'm going to go do the dance competition thing. I'm going to eat at all the restaurants, order all the fucking food and drinks I want. I'm going to go to the bar and get hammered and talk to the robot bartender. It's awesome for like a while.
Right,
but then after a while, you're like, okay, how many times can I go back to the Mexican restaurant and order like 15 margaritas from the little robot waitress?
Right.
All by myself, you know, and like his hair's growing out, his beard's growing out, and he's just like getting progressively more and more sad and lonely and depressed and just drinking all the time.
You see the stages of depression hit that, you know, people say they can live their lives alone, but I don't think anyone can truly live alone. He literally had nothing. You could say he had the robot to talk to. It's a robot.
Yeah. With probably like limited voice commands and responses and stuff. Like, it's not like talking to a human being. You're going to get the same interactions every time.
So I would have done the same thing. I would have woke someone up. Now
it's either that. It's either you have like three choices. I either just live the rest of my life completely by myself, and I have to find a way to live with that, or I kill myself, like what he was thinking about doing, like launching himself out the airlock with no suit on, which he couldn't bring himself to do that. Or option three is I wake someone else up. And then you have to live with that guilt of like, I just basically ruined this person's life, because they're not going to be able to fall back asleep either, and they're going to have to live out the rest of their life on this ship with me against their will. And I just took whatever life they were going to have on this planet when we got there away from them completely. You know what I mean?
But think of this too. and this is just going to be more of the movie side of things. Had he not woke her up, he couldn't have fixed the ship by himself.
That's true, yeah.
So they would have all died anyways.
Yeah.
So did he end up killing her? No. He ended up saving her life in, a full circle way.
There you go, Matt. The silver lining. I like it.
Right. Well, I mean, think about it. Everyone on the ship would have died.
You're right. Everyone would have died anyway.
But they would have been asleep when they died. So they would have just died.
They would have just died. They would have just never woken up. Yeah.
She not only, she got to live a long life on that.
Yeah. Because they make it seem like they lived like the rest of their life, like 50, 60 years. They just lived the rest of their life out on that ship.
Because everyone started to wake up and there's trees and there's a forest, there's a river and everything. And people are looking at it like, what the hell's happening?
Yeah.
None of that would have ever happened because that ship would have blown up.
Right. It's a good point.
So
it's a cool movie.
Technically, he didn't kill her because he saved everyone.
He saved her in a way. Yeah.
Right.
You can think about it that way.
So
you can think about it the negative way or the positive way.
Right.
I like how you have a positive outlook.
In terms of the movie, he saved everybody on board.
Yeah.
And
so you got Apollo 13, The Martian, Passengers, and what's your other one?
My favorite all time, and I think we've both agreed on this, is Interstellar. And I watched it today. The theory of a wormhole to me is fascinating. That we could travel through a wormhole, which could take us billions of light years away to places of, the universe we never would have known.
Yeah.
The fact of, that could even exist, which, of course, we don't know if they exist, because if a scientist could create a wormhole, one, I think we're fucked as a society. But two, the fact that you could travel, not necessarily through time, but through time, is, it's literally a bend in time that you skip.
I'm totally in agreement. Interstellar is my favorite space movie of all time. I just straight up think it's one of the best movies ever. It's like top 10 movies for me. And there are some people out there, I'm a totally, I will admit this, I am a giant Christopher Nolan fan. So basically any movie that he comes out with, I'm in love with. There are some people out there who don't like Christopher Nolan movies that much. They like to poke holes in the plot and stuff. And some people don't really go along with the plot in Interstellar. The plot gets a little too fantastical for them at some point where they just kind of check out. I don't. I think Interstellar is one of the best examples of inspiring awe in a movie that I've ever seen. How many other directors do you think could create a movie like that literally just instills a sense of wonder in you? You're just watching this beautiful, amazing story play out on the screen, and you're like, I can't even believe someone came up with this idea. And I like what you said about the wormhole stuff, all the scientific theories that they touch on and then expand on because essentially what he did was there was all these articles that came out around the time that Interstellar came out, and it was I forget the name of the dude, but there was some famous astrophysicist that Christopher Nolan literally hired as a scientific liaison to the movie to come onto the set and be okay, and during the script writing process and all that, be here's what the science is. And then Christopher Nolan basically took that stuff and went, okay, I'm a fiction writer. I'm going to take these science ideas and theories that are real in our life and take them and put my imagination into it and expand upon it. And what we got was Interstellar. So like you said, the wormholes, all that stuff is true in theory. They theorize that those things are real. We've never experienced one. We don't know what to do with it really. But the idea that there is math and science behind the idea that you could go through a wormhole and it bends space-time to the fact that you could get from point A to point B quicker than just going in a straight line. It just brings point A and point B.
All right, it's like folding a piece of paper.
I like how they do the folding the piece of paper example of what's the fastest way from point A to point B? A straight line, right? And he's like, no. He folds the paper up and A and B are just touching, and he pushes the pencil through the paper, and he's like, you bend space-time, and pretty soon you're not traveling from A to B. You go from A to being at B instantaneously. You know what I mean? That's just a fascinating idea.
And people go, well, it's not real, and it's hard to argue something because people are always like, well, use science. I'm like, well, science in theory says that these are real.
I mean, it's based in like concrete, real science. I mean,
But-
it's not like he's making that up. He's just taking it and going,
Right.
here's something cool that I imagine this maybe one day leading to.
But like the thing is like even his fiction of what it could lead to could literally lead us into another galaxy
Yeah.
where there's habitable planets and uninhabitable planets like the galaxy we live in right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Earth so far obviously has been the only habitable planet that we have
Yeah.
found. They said they've found other planets out there that could sustain life, that
they're,
could
like,
be
too
exactly
far
like
away.
Earth. But how are we going to get there?
Yeah. Because that's the thing that I like to think about. You know, when you read like cool press releases about space stuff, like NASA findings and like,
Yeah.
you know, recent stuff that they found out, and they'll say they found this thing that was 10,000 light years away. And you always just like read that and you're like, okay, well, that's the numeric value that you know, space scientists and astrophysicists and stuff like that just assign to measuring how long it would take to travel these distances. And you just kind of take it for granted. Like, okay, 10,000 light years, it's far. But if you really like sit there and break it down, that means that if you were traveling at the speed of light, it would take you 10,000 years to get from here to there. So in Interstellar, Michael Caine's character, the old astrophysicist, is talking about if we really want to expand beyond Earth and go to other habitable worlds, we're going to have to confront the idea of interstellar travel, which is why the movie's called Interstellar, because he goes, we're going to have to expand beyond our own lifespans, because there may be planets like they find in the movie that could potentially be habitable for us, but if we just got on a spaceship and flew there, we'd all be dead before we got there. There's no way that human beings can make the trip, so you have to use something like a wormhole to make up the distance, because there's no way we're going to make... Like, think about that. We can't even travel at the speed of light yet, and even if you were traveling at the speed of light, which is insanely fucking fast, it's not... You can't get there in 10,000 years. Like, no one's going to live 10,000 years, you know? Like,
Right,
it's just
so-
insane to think about the vast distances.
Well, and when people talk about that, you know, it's like you said, it's the universe is truly infinite. We there's no end in
It's
the
so
universe,
crazy to think about.
and you know, a light year is 5.88 trillion miles.
Well,
you gotta do
yeah.
some math into that.
So I think I read, and that might be in my cool little space facts that I'll talk about here in a little bit, but I think I read that light travels at 182,000 miles per second.
right,
So if you could travel, like imagine traveling that fast. You traveled 182,000 miles per second, and it took you a fucking year to get somewhere. That's a light year.
right. They say
That's insane, dude.
because the way you have to calculate that then is however fast light travels per second, you have to multiply that by however many seconds are in a minute, obviously.
Exactly, yeah.
Then you have to do that by however many are in an hour.
Yeah.
Then you have to do that by however many are in a day,
Yeah.
and then you have to do that by however many are in a year, and so it would come out to be 5.88 trillion miles.
Yeah.
So we could go from here, and I don't even know what's 5.88 trillion miles away, but in 1 year we could be 5.88 trillion miles away from Earth, and I'm pretty sure our galaxy would just be, you know, a speck.
Yeah.
Which is
And that's only 1 light year away. And they find stuff all the time where like this is 6,000 light years away or 1,000,000 light years
which
away.
is
And you're
insane
like, what
to think
the fuck?
that,
Like it just cooks your brain to think about that.
well, and what cooks my brain more is, well, how do we have a picture of it if it's that far away?
yeah, dude, that's so
What
cool.
technology is so advanced that we have a picture of that?
Yeah, it's so cool.
I'm pretty
to
sure the
think
Hubble
about.
telescope was put out in the late 90s or middle to late 90s. And that shit's like 330 miles off the Earth's surface. Like, it's not like this shit's just free floating through space, just
Yeah.
taking pictures as it goes.
It's
and-
amazing how far they can snapshot stuff and like these.
Well, and if that technology was truly built, you know, it's probably built 25, 30 years ago. Are we building a new I think there is a new telescope actually. It's supposed to replace the Hubble in the next like 2 or 3 years.
I think I read about that. yeah.
Just like there's something that's supposed to replace the space station. They're
Yeah.
going to crash the space
International
station
Space
into the
Station,
Earth.
Yeah.
They're going to crash it into the furthest point from humanity in the southern Pacific, which I've heard is literally a space graveyard where they try and
They try and crash.
they
stuff
try
when it
and
comes
crash
back down.
satellites and everything.
I wonder how they do
down
that. I
into
wonder
that.
how they aim a crash basically. Like send a satellite down through the atmosphere and go, okay, we want it to land here. Instead of just dropping it in the middle of downtown Denver.
I mean,
could you fucking imagine?
I mean, if you can control the orbit, you can control where it'd be
Yeah.
like landing a spaceship, because when you go up, like when SpaceX just did their recent launch,
Yeah.
their last abort was over like Ireland.
Yeah.
So they launched from Florida, and their last abort would have been over Ireland. So
Yeah.
just in the way they were launching, they're obviously going on a northern trajectory.
Yeah.
So they would have to be like, oh, our satellite flies, whatever crisscross in terms of the Earth's rotation, and then they'd have to time it to be, okay, we have to enter the atmosphere
Yeah.
here, and by the time it hits the water, it'll be in this general area. But like I've heard that the old Russian space station was crashed there, and that's where they would crash because you can't just leave a bunch of space debris. I mean,
Yeah.
what are we gonna do? Just send off the International Space Station into space? Like,
I guess.
I guess you could.
You know what I imagine it looking like at some point is, and I actually have this on my list of space movies that are really good. WALL-E. Remember WALL-E?
dude, favorite animated movie
It's
ever.
so fucking good. I cannot understate how awesome WALL-E is. But you know when they eventually like leave, like he gets on the ship with Eva and they go up through the atmosphere and leave Earth, and he like looks back down and it's just literally surrounding the Earth is just like a fucking net of satellites. There's
Yeah.
just so many of them. Like it's this protective barrier, just like space junk. Like we've literally like trashed the planet so much that we moved up into space and trashed space so much that you can't even like launch out of Earth without like crashing through like basically a debris field of like old satellites. And I'm like, that's what I imagine it eventually looking like, to be honest.
Which is insane because when you look up, like, you can't. I mean, you can see some satellites going across the horizon at night and stuff, but it's not like you just see like
You don't see like
10,000,
cover the
like a
sky.
swarm.
Yeah.
You're like, are we getting invaded by an alien army?
Yeah.
Or everyone's like, I don't know. That's the GPS. That one's
Yeah.
Dish.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That one's the U.S.
that one's
military.
from Disney.
That's
That one's
Soviet.
a military satellite. This one's Tesla.
That one some dude made and somehow got into orbit, and we don't know what it does. So right now there's 2,666 satellites orbiting the Earth.
Wow, that's
So-
a lot.
So it sounds like a lot, but I guess in terms of when you think about
I
stuff,
wonder how
orbiting the Earth-
often. This actually kind of relates to another space movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it. You ever seen Gravity
That's the one with
George Clooney and Sandra Bullock? You
I
ever seen
haven't
that one?
seen that one.
Do yourself a favor and check that one out. It's pretty fucking dope. I was just wondering, like, I wonder how often those things come really close to just smashing into each other. 'Cause
I'm
they
sure it
travel
happens
like
all the time.
really fast around
Right.
the orbit of the Earth, and there's 2,600 of them up there. Like, I wonder how often it happens where they have to adjust their paths and stuff to not just slam into each other and explode.
I'm sure it happens.
That's kind of what happens
all
in
the
Gravity, and
time.
they get like thrown off into space, and she ends up having to like fight her way back onto one of them and trying to come
Spoiler
down
alert.
and stuff. Dude, I mean, I literally don't remember that much about the plot. I just remember it's kind of a space survival movie with Sandra Bullock and George Clooney, and it's pretty awesome. You should check it out.
No, I mean, I totally could agree that. Well, and how many satellites are there up there that we don't know about? You know,
Oh shit, that's been launched that they don't just never say
Like,
anything about.
maybe this is going back to like Cold War era and
Yeah.
the space race. But have you ever seen Space Cowboys?
Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
So a
movie.
satellite with nuclear warheads attached
Yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure there are, but like, how would we ever know?
Did you ever
that-
see?
that's not public information.
It's one of the G.I. Joe movies, and they're very cheesy. But one of the plot things in that movie is like the bad guys have this satellite up in space, and it's not even it's not going to drop any bombs. It's literally just this giant like steel rod. They just drop it, and it catches so much speed coming down in the gravity and through the atmosphere of Earth that like if it hits, it's literally going to like pulverize an entire city. And that's like the plot of like one of the G.I. Joe movies. But I
Never
was like,
seen it, but
it's totally real. Like he was basically saying like, oh, they're like, are you going to drop nukes on us? He's like, no, I don't have to drop any bomb. I just have to drop a piece of metal.
you could drop a rock.
Yeah, and it's going to literally incinerate an entire city because when it hits Earth, it's going to be hitting at such a high velocity that it's going to go straight through the crust and just fucking pulverize everything.
People go. I think there's an asteroid that's passing close to Earth here soon. It's like 15 football fields, like the size of 15 football fields.
God.
So on Earth, you're like, holy shit, that's huge. In terms of space and like coming to hit Earth that's really not that big. Like, here in Colorado, we have hundreds of football fields. This asteroid's only 15. And like, yeah, that could pretty much just kill civilization.
Yeah.
That thing would blow up like the Earth, and we're all like, what? It's not that big. And like, yeah, no, if it, wanted to, you'd all be dead.
What's really crazy is like how many. So isn't there a difference between there's a difference between asteroids, meteors, and meteorites, right? Like one of them is a technical classification for which one actually hits the surface.
So I think a meteorite hits the surface. I mean, it's just like the little, space debris chunk or whatever. A meteor is the one that you can see
it going past.
And an asteroid is like Armageddon. You're fucked.
Yeah. So how many like asteroids or meteors that could have been like civilization killers over the course of the millions and millions of year history of Earth that could have been like life extinction events that the only reason we survived is because Earth has an atmosphere. Like things like the moon and Mars and stuff like that will just get fucking hit with those things all the time. Like that's why there's so many craters on the moon, is it has no atmosphere to burn that stuff up. Yeah, there's no shield. So these things will just come flying by, just collapse right into the moon. That's what would happen to Earth if we didn't have an atmosphere. So it's kind of amazing. You think about, dude, it really trips me out to think about how insanely lucky we are to be existing as human beings on Earth. Like how many, like multiple billions, like the number I couldn't even possibly think about of variables that had to be in place perfectly for like you and I to exist at this very moment on Earth, sitting here having this podcast. And I know that sounds like a really like high person thing to say or something, but think about like how unique, like even in our own atmosphere, in our own solar system, out of all of the planets that exist, so far the only one we know of that can support life is the one we're currently on. The only one that has an atmosphere and plants and air and water. The only one. And the only one we've been searching out into the rest of our solar system, past our solar system, into other places in our galaxy, past our galaxy. So far, zero evidence of any other planets, not a one fucking planet that could support life that we've found.
In an
how lucky
universe.
That is.
Well, and so that would be, and I obviously will not get into this, but that becomes one of those, like, who do you think created us? Because there's got to be there's got to be a creator.
Yeah, it's like the whole
everything.
Yeah, the whole argument is always, is this just blind luck? Like the universe was just chaos. Shit was thrown against each other. The sun. Like different stars are exploding all the time, creating black holes, sucking things in. Different planets are colliding with each other, causing little satellite things like the moon to orbit stuff. Millions and millions and millions, billions of years this goes back. This has been happening.
Oh, yeah.
Was that all just chance, or was there some grand design behind it? Like, is it just chance that we ended up being the third rock from the sun and just perfectly far away, that we're warm enough, but not too close to be too hot, not far enough away to be too cold? Like, just the perfect Goldilocks zone where we can have life exist. And then for the Earth to stay in that Goldilocks zone long enough for not only life to exist, but for intelligent life to exist. It's fucking crazy, man. It's so crazy to think about.
That's what, like, it brings up that is, like I said about religion is, in my opinion, there is an ultimate being, and obviously I have my religion, I have my faith that I don't say I stand by, but I definitely believe in. And so I do believe, God created the heavens and the earths, but it becomes one of those, like, so did God create the whole universe? Like, it can become one of those, like, infinite discussions that,
there's
honestly,
just no answers to.
The only answer I'll ever get is, because I believe I'll go to heaven, is when I go to heaven, what I find out up there.
Yeah.
But it becomes one of those, like, going back to the asteroids, what are the chances of everything? People believe, like, the Big Bang Theory, where everything just collided and, the worlds were created and shit. Like,
yeah,
how, the rocks were spinning so fast they became these perfectly smooth, rounded planets. Like,
yeah.
And then, we have asteroids that wipe out the dinosaurs, and I don't know much about that, and I'm not going to try and sugarcoat like I do, but everyone says now if an asteroid comes in, it would wipe out civilization, and the Earth could literally, like, blow up.
Yeah.
So if there was an asteroid beforehand that hit Earth, to wipe out everything living on it before, where's the evidence that this like where did the asteroid go? Did the rock just disappear?
They
Or,
do
like,
have evidence. And again, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but I've heard people talk about it who do know what they're talking about. So like, I would encourage you to go look it up. And obviously, like, I'm not saying like, oh, go look it up, dude. You don't know what you're talking
you're a
about.
dumbass, bro.
I don't know shit either. I'm just saying, like, I've heard smart people talk about it, and apparently there is evidence that you can find of. I think we've had, excuse me, multiple extinction level events happen on Earth throughout the course of its history, where these asteroids will, like the dinosaurs was not the only one.
Right.
That
Those
happened.
millions. This is the
Yeah.
most recent.
It's the most recent one that we can like find evidence of and stuff. But like, that's another crazy thing. By the way, we should do, just quick sidebar, we should do an episode on dinosaurs. I fucking love dinosaurs, dude.
All right,
Sorry, I'll get back to what I was talking about.
because
But
if
yeah,
they're real, we're fucked.
but yeah, just there was like, they say that they have found evidence for multiple extinction level events, and where some asteroid hits, wipes out life, just wipes out all of it. And then at some point, life starts back down at the building blocks and works its way back up again. And you get back to whatever we had, dinosaurs or
Right.
some sludge-like creatures, whatever the fuck we had. And then after the last thing that happened, X amount of millions of years passed, and you end up getting human beings on the planet, And it's just really like the history of the Earth is a fascinating thing to learn about. And it goes back hundreds of millions of years,
So
like
then,
billions of years.
Do you think in time, do you believe in like parallel universes? Like, do you
I
think
love
there's
thinking about it.
do you think there's another universe out there right now where this is happening at this?
I think
exact
it's
moment?
entirely plausible. It's one of those things where if you learn that the universe is infinite, it's not really that much of a stretch for me to go, okay, there's multiple universes. It just doesn't seem like, if we're going to start thinking about these really grand ideas,
There's
that
the
are
Marvel universe,
really fun to think about, and like fun like thought experiments.
right?
Okay, if one's totally plausible, then some other totally fantastical thing has to be equally as plausible. Like it's, to me, like human beings are at a really frustrating point in our evolution, because we're smart enough to like think we're pretty smart, but we're also smart enough to just, once you start trying to learn about stuff like space or like the history of the planet and all this kind of stuff, you realize very, very, very quickly you don't know shit. Even the smartest people on the planet who are experts in their field of astrophysics or the history of the world, like prehistoric, archaeologists and all this kind of stuff, the more they learn, the more they realize, I don't know shit about what has gone on, about what is going to happen. You just don't know. And like, we don't have access to this information. And I think that's one of the coolest things about being a human being, is like just that constant sense of curiosity, of just wanting to find out more all the time. Like, that's what has driven us to this point right now, is the curiosity and the desire to make things better and learn more shit. That's all we want to do, is just learn more stuff all the time.
So then I would ask, and this is,
I don't even know what your question was. If you asked me a question, I was just ranting.
I don't know.
You got me talking about space, man. I love space.
But so I've seen a comparison of like the human brain to universe.
To the universe. I've seen that too. It's so cool.
So I've sat there and I've mind fucked myself over and over and over again, going, what if the universe was a human brain? What if we are just cells inside of a human brain? Or a brain, maybe not even a human brain.
Yeah.
Maybe we're like a pigeon brain or something, because we have a lot of dumbasses on this planet. And like, that's like what's going on. Like, and what if we have a universe inside our own head?
Yeah.
It's something we will never know.
It's one of those things, you look at it and you're like, okay, the structure of the human brain and the structure of the universe look remarkably similar. What am I supposed to do with that information?
Right.
What am I supposed to think about that?
It could go back to me bringing up, like, do you believe in a ultimate being? What if the whole reason is the universe is an ultimate being's brain, and we are literally just,
we're some cell or neuron.
We're the cell or neuron, or we're the thoughts.
Yeah.
Like in this ultimate being's brain, what if we are just thoughts?
Yeah.
What if
We sound like a couple of stoners sitting here talking, by the way. And I love it.
I don't know, because we're bringing in like good points. Some stoners would just be like, yeah, man. Like,
By the
wow.
way, we are both totally sober. I'm just very fascinated by space.
By the way, this podcast is brought to you by Body Armor Light,
And
watermelon flavor, and Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola.
Maybe one day we'll get a sponsor.
Not the other Coke. So, yeah, we just went on a really long rant about a bunch of weird space shit. You want me to read off some cool space facts?
Yeah, but I mean, like, these space facts are going to get boring at some point because there's going to be new space facts.
Here we go, dude. So we're talking about crazy space shit. I was telling you a little bit about the idea of time dilation.
Yeah.
So let me just read you a little bit of this. I found this cool. So this is an idea that I stumbled upon probably after watching Interstellar for like the 10th time, because I love Interstellar. But this is anyone who out there who has seen Interstellar, that movie grapples with this idea of time dilation, because Matthew McConaughey's character leaves Earth, leaves his son and daughter here, and ends up going on this, fantastical space adventure. He travels through a black hole. He's near a black hole, exploring other planets, all this kind of stuff. He ends up coming back. He looks relatively the same. Like, not that much time has passed, a couple years. Well, his daughter went from being like 13 to like 90. So that's the idea of like time dilation. So I found, I never was able to find this cool article that I found months back when I was like doing just some Google searching about this, but I did find this really cool article by this guy who wrote it in the MIT Technology Review. And I just wanted to read you like a couple of little blurbs. Bear with me. It's cool.
Well, I'm going to jump in real quick because I
Okay.
think you'll hit it.
Go ahead.
But and we talked about this before we started, the episode, and you talked about how like if we each had our own watch and you travel in space.
Yeah.
In Interstellar, remember he has his
They
watch
do,
and they set
yeah.
their watches to the same exact time, and he goes, "When I come home, we'll see."
Yeah, we'll compare the time,
compare
yeah.
the times, and I'm not going to say spoiler alert because the movie's been out, and if you haven't watched it, then
Yeah, it's been out for 6 years. Go see it.
you deserve to get spoiled here, but. He uses the watch to literally communicate with her through Morse code that,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
to solve the entire,
And they make time a physical dimension that he can like manipulate, which
right,
is
which is
so
brings us
cool,
back to
dude.
another big issue, or not big issue, but like big thing about the ultimate beings, because in the movie he goes, he's like, they want us, and he keeps saying they, and then he
yeah.
finally goes, it's not they,
it's us.
it's us. He
Yeah.
goes, we created this.
Yeah.
And I think it's TARS is the
the robot.
The robot. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, we created this
Yeah.
way in the future
Yeah.
for this specific moment for future generations.
Yeah.
And, that just goes back to our whole thing of, it's going to go into your time dilation that
Yeah.
they literally are using something that hasn't been created yet in their lifetime.
Yeah.
I mean, it just like, it's one of those things,
No,
the more
it's-
you sit here and you think about
it's-
it, you
it's
like,
crazy. It cooks
you
your
lose
noodle. Yeah.
explanations. You're
Yeah.
like, okay, now I got it. Like the first time
Yeah.
I watched Interstellar, it finished at like
You're like,
3
what
a.m.
happened?
and I was literally up till like 5:30, 6 a.m.
Yeah, like researching
Googling
shit,
and like
yeah.
researching it. I was like mind blown. I'm like, oh shit, I got to go to bed. Like,
Yeah.
I got to wake up in like 2 hours to go to work. But I was like mind blown.
You're
was
like, I gotta get to the bottom of this. This is crazy.
And everything I researched was like, a realistic possibility in
Yeah.
theory.
Yeah.
So-
And the idea there too, what you were talking about towards, and this for anyone out there who hasn't seen it, this is like the climax of the movie, and basically the way he's kind of like outlining it is he's saying future humans have access to time as a physical dimension, whereas we don't yet. We just
Right,
experience
right.
time linearly. We're prisoners of the present, and we have to flow from past to present to future in that order.
Right.
There's no changing it. We can't. So like. They kind of make some mention of it in the movie too, of like time to them. And she keeps. This is before they identify them. They're just talking about them. They're like, time to them might be like the past might be a valley they can climb into,
Right.
and the future might be a mountain they can climb up. But to us, it's not. The future is the future, and we're going to experience it whenever we get there. The past is the past. It's already happened. We can't go
Right.
back and change anything. And the idea towards the end of it is like, human beings from the future have placed this wormhole within reach of us in the past so that we can get from point A to point B.
So we can save humanity.
Save humanity. And then they present this, like, they present time as a physical dimension to Matthew McConaughey's character to represent, like, the past has always happened, the present has always been happening, and the future will have always happened. So
Right.
we the reason why he's experiencing this right now is to get us to the point where in the future we then create this thing for him to get us there, if it makes any sense. So like it's all one time, it's always happened and it always will be happening, kind of thing.
Well, because the
It's
only
like
thing
a really
that
cool concept.
Because the only thing that can travel through time is gravity.
Yeah, like in gravity, and I'll get into this in a second with like Einstein's theory of special relativity and the idea that gravity affects time and space is one of the craziest things you could learn about space.
Can we just touch on
so crazy?
Like you bringing up Einstein real quick? A lot of scientists that like found this shit out are all dead.
Oh, like, and they found it out like a long time ago. Some of them, at least the math behind
which
it.
is insane to think that they were finding out this shit without the technology we have these days. Yeah. Could you imagine if we had like if Stephen Hawking was like just coming into his prime right now?
Yeah. And had access to like artificial intelligence
and had access to everything we have,
the Hubble Space Telescope and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
like we have very smart people, but we don't have like people like an Einstein.
Like what would an Einstein have done today?
Right,
if he was like 25 and
even Newton's laws of gravity, like that shit is like
it was hundreds of years old. He figured that out a long time ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of an apple falling out of a tree.
We're still using those laws today.
Right.
In like normal physics.
Like maybe there's a Hawking's law or something, but I don't know about. But like I don't know of any recent scientist that there's been a new law created for.
Yeah.
This is all, decades plus old, and it's just mind-boggling. But go into your article.
So I'm just gonna read word for word some of what this article says, because if I don't, I'm gonna butcher it. And I will repeat again. I have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. I'm just interested in this stuff. So this was written by a guy named Neil Patel, I guess, and he wrote this in December of last year in the MIT Technology Review. So if anyone out there wants to look this up, the title of the article is literally, "Would you really age more slowly on a spaceship at close to light speed?" And he writes a little article answering the question. So one little paragraph in here is he says, "Time dilation goes back to Einstein's theory of special relativity, which teaches us that motion through space actually creates alterations in the flow of time." That's a crazy sentence. Yeah. "The faster you move through the three dimensions that define physical space, the more slowly you're moving through the fourth dimension, time, at least relative to another object. Time is measured differently for the twin who moved through space and the twin who stayed on Earth. The clock in motion will tick more slowly than the clocks we're watching on Earth. If you're able to travel near the speed of light, the effects are much more pronounced." So to go back and give a little context, this is the idea, what he's explaining is the idea of the twin paradox. So, and I was talking to Matt a little bit about this before we started. Words are hard. If you had a twin brother or whatever, you both have a stopwatch or a clock or whatever. One brother stays on Earth, one brother gets on a spaceship and travels either near the speed of light or at the speed of light towards some distant star, and then turns around and comes back. The idea is that the one who was on Earth will have aged faster than the one who traveled on the rocket ship due to gravity's effects on time and acceleration and all this kind of stuff. So he then goes on to say, let's see. So in your question, an astronaut returning from a space journey at relativistic speeds, which he describes as basically being anywhere at least 1/10 the speed of light, so not even at light speed, would, upon return, be younger than same-age friends and family who stayed on Earth. Exactly how much younger depends on exactly how fast the spacecraft had been moving and accelerating, so it's not something we can readily answer. But if you're trying to reach an exoplanet 10 to 50 light years away and still make it home before you yourself die of old age, you'd have to be moving at close to light speed. And then he goes on to even mention Interstellar. He says, "There's another wrinkle here worth mentioning, time dilation as a result of gravitational effects. You might have seen Christopher Nolan's movie Interstellar, where the close proximity of a black hole causes time on another planet to slow down tremendously." And he mentions that 1 hour on that planet is 7 years back home on Earth, which is something
even outside of their gravitational pull.
Yeah. Let me see. I think this last paragraph is kind of interesting too. "This form of time dilation is also real, and it's because of Einstein's theory of general relativity. Gravity can bend space-time and therefore time itself. The closer the clock is to the source of gravitation, the slower time passes, the farther away the clock is from gravity, the faster time will pass. I don't know, man. That shit is just really crazy to think about to me. And when you watch Interstellar, if you don't know that the idea of time dilation is a real thing, you're like, was he just making this up for the movie, or is this real shit? But based on, I mean, we don't have, they can measure that a little bit here on Earth with like atomic clocks that can get down to things that are like even faster than milliseconds and stuff, and measure like if you send one on a plane and this one on a plane and go in opposite directions, when they come back, they will have very slightly different times. So you can measure it like a little bit, but we don't have the capability of traveling at light speed. So you can't do these experiments of like, is a 45-year-old guy gonna go travel at light speed, be gone for a couple years, come back, and he's gonna be looking 45, and then someone here on Earth who was 45 is now 90 all of a sudden, you know, like, or dead. Yeah, like we can't measure things like that, or measure how great the distance and all that would be, and how fast or how slow the time would change, because we don't yet have the ability to travel at light speed. But just imagine once that becomes a real thing, because we are, as soon as we have that capability, we're going to start sending astronauts at the speed of light towards other possible habitable planets. I'm sure we're going to. I mean, that just seems like a natural progression of space travel. So anyway, that was my little rant about time dilation. For anyone else out there who's interested in it, just Google time dilation and just start reading articles about it. It's an incredibly fascinating theory.
Well, and, you know, I don't know how I'm no scientist. You know, I'm no genius, as much as I like to think I am. I might be a smart ass, but I'm not a genius. And so I'm just trying to like figure out how one calculated the speed of light.
That's a good question.
Like, how the fuck did we sit there with a radar gun and be like, all right, turn the light on?
Yeah.
You know, obviously we couldn't do that. So like I'm trying to like read through how, and I mean it'll take me all night to read through it, but
that's a good question, because it's. I told you I thought I read before this that they know that light travels at 182,000 miles per second. But I thought, when I read that, I thought the same thing. Well, how the fuck did we measure that? It's one of those things.
How do you? I mean, if you think about it, any light you ever have turned on, it's
instantaneous. The light hits you instantaneously.
It's instantaneous, and people go, well, why doesn't your light keep going if it's that fast? And I'm like, well, that's dumb. Like, like it just doesn't go forever. Like, that's just dumb. Like, our sun does not reach into galaxies far, far away, or if it does, it's just a dot. But like they say, 90% of the stars we see out there are, suns that have already ended life. Like, they're at the end of their life. They've already exploded and everything.
That's something crazy to think about too. That space is so vast and it takes light so long to travel from some of these distances to here, that like they'll see every once in a while they'll see like a supernova happening or whatever, which is like a star exploding or imploding. I'm not sure.
And then they're like, oh, that happened like 9 billion.
Yeah, they'll say,
ago.
oh, that actually happened billions of years ago. We're just now seeing the light from that event. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Want to run that by me again?
I mean, it's insane to see that, because it's like, well, how the fuck are we calculating this shit? Like,
yeah, and
if you have any scientists that are listening to this, please give us an email.
I highly doubt there are any scientists.
We would love to have you on.
I would love to have someone
have you on the episode.
That'd
explain all this shit to us, because
I just want, literally, if we knew somehow someone in our life who was like an astrophysicist, I would kill to have them over here, turn on the mics, and just be like, tell me cool shit about space, please.
Or tell me what is realistic and what is not realistic. Yeah. Like, we can break the sound barrier, and we've done that for decades. So now I'm sitting there and people are like, well, one day we'll travel the speed of light, and I go, Star Wars, they have light speed.
Yeah.
How the fuck are we ever going to travel that fast? 6.88 what was it? 6.8 or 5.88 trillion miles in a year.
Yeah.
One, where the fuck are we going? And how are we going to slow down?
In that universe too, it seems like everything's close enough that even in traveling at light speed, they can get there and within like a couple minutes.
Right.
Because they're always like, we're going to go light speed, and they punch it into light speed, and then it's like they talk for a couple minutes, and they're like, oh, we're almost here, and then they pull out of light speed, and they're like there. So I'm like, even traveling at light speed, like those things must not be quote unquote that far away. 'Cause
Right,
If
I
they
mean-
were, it would take you a year to get there, even if you were traveling at light speed.
I mean, say
you
we
know?
could travel at light speed. How long would it take us to realistically fully explore like the Milky Way galaxy?
The Milky Way. I mean,
Because
I
our
don't know,
solar
'cause
system
I
is just
think-
a small part
Yeah.
of the Milky Way.
I think if you literally just went in a straight line from here to Pluto, you could get there, but it would take multiple years. I don't even, maybe decades. I don't know, but I think you could do it within the span of like one human lifetime. I'm pretty
But
sure.
I'm saying like so like the Milky Way is bigger than just our solar system.
Oh, you're talking about
I'm
the
talking
Milky Way,
like the
or-
full
okay,
galaxy. Like
yeah.
how long if we could travel at the speed? Because
I don't know.
Because if you think of Star Wars, like we're bringing Star Wars, and I know it's a very unrealistic movie in term. Well, it could be super realistic. We don't know, but it says in a galaxy far, far away, right? So it's just a single galaxy.
So I have your answer.
So they just but I'm just gonna use Star Wars because
Okay.
they say in a galaxy, not in multiple galaxies. So Star Wars universe takes place in one galaxy, like the Milky Way.
Yeah.
So if they travel at light speed, like I wonder how long if we travel at light speed, or like it would take us to completely explore the Milky Way.
I have an answer for you.
All right, let's hear it.
I googled Milky Way galaxy diameter, and so basically going widthways across.
Right.
105,700 light years. That's exactly how long it would take. If we were traveling at the speed of light, it would take 105,000 years.
Just our galaxy.
Just our galaxy.
So that is
And then
why.
you wake up and you're like, woo, we made it, guys. We're out of the Milky Way now.
And then you look out your window and you're next to Saturn. And everyone's like, you dumbass.
No, we're not.
So then. It is just mind blowing that we're seeing shit from billions of years ago just now.
It's so weird, man. It is the craziest shit to think about.
So then, but like, if our sun exploded, we're dead.
Yeah, they think that's supposed to happen in another like 3 billion years. It's supposed to.
So in our lifetime,
Yeah, it's coming up. Better prepare. You need to be a doomsday prepper. It's supposedly like always expanding, and it's going
Right.
to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So before it blows up, Earth will have long been like exploded by being
Right.
too close to the sun and being basically like pulverized. But I think they say like in 3.5 billion years it's supposed to explode. Like the sun's gonna no longer exist.
so then, and some distant planet in a galaxy far, far
Yeah.
away, they'll have seen
A couple
our
of
sun,
aliens sitting there podcasting are gonna see our sun
blow
go
up, and they'll be
supernova.
like,
yeah,
"Them motherfuckers blew up billions of years
Yep.
ago, and we'll all have been gone."
yep,
That's just, I mean, it's insane to think about how vast space is.
yeah. So I
Or it's the greatest myth in human history.
yeah, or it's the biggest con ever in space.
There's just one cover.
Yeah.
We're a bunch of ants in some dude's like farm that just puts dots above us.
I took a class actually in college that was literally about the exploration. It was the search for intelligent life in space, basically. So dope.
They exist.
And you learn about this thing called the Drake equation, and essentially the Drake equation, I could look it up and tell you what it is, but it's like this whole equation of basically the theoretical possibility of how many planets hold intelligent life. And what it does is it has all these variables. So it's like how many stars are out there? And then the next variable is like how many stars have solar systems of planets orbiting it? How many of those stars with solar systems of planets orbiting it have any planets orbiting in a habitable zone like the Earth? Out of those, so you keep like whittling down your
Right.
variables, right? So out of those, how many of those planets in those Goldilocks zones of those stars out of the billions upon billions in the universe have had a chance for life to develop? And then out of those, how many have had a chance for life to develop into intelligent life? And so the thing that like there may be at whatever we consider to be present moment, zero other forms of intelligent life in the entire universe, quite possibly. But there either could have been in the past another planet of alien intelligent life that just they existed, came into prominence, and then died out billions and billions of years ago before we ever came into existence.
Right.
Or we're going to die out, and billions of years from now, there will be other. So, like, the odds that there are two civilizations of intelligent life that could be existing at the same exact time and contacting each other are so, like, infinitesimally small That's what like the whole idea of the Drake equation is.
But you also can't rule out the fact, because we know nothing
it's
about the infinite universe, that
if I was gonna put a bet on it, I would put a bet that there is other life in the universe.
like if
Because
Cybertron
it's
just shows up outside of Chicago one day, I'm gonna be like,
the odds of that happening are insanely small, but there are odds. Like,
or
it's a
Han
real- it's
Solo
very
comes
possible.
rolling in.
It's very possible.
Han Solo comes rolling in with Bumblebee, and they're about to throw down against fucking Alien and Predator, and
It'd be a movie person's like
all right,
wet dream.
let's get ready. Let's get the script writing and start this
That's the
movie
mega
up.
crossover event of
And then
2025.
Star Trek happens, and they fight Darth Vader, and then Spaceballs comes in, and I mean, all this shit could happen, and you heard it right here on what's the date? On September 3rd at 9:05 p.m. Mountain Standard Time,
2020.
2020.
You want to hear some cool space
Yeah,
facts?
let's hear it. Otherwise, we'll never.
Other
get to
than
your
the
cool
shit that I've
space
just
facts.
been rambling about.
Everything
and-
about space is cool.
Dude, so cool. And all of the space facts that I've said up until this point, pretty sure I got them right, but also not positive. It's just shit I've read. So
We could be completely wrong.
you guys should definitely fact check me out there, but it's cool to think about. So,
This is my space to think about. So
I found this cool website that just had 17 cool facts about space. Number one is space is completely silent. There's no atmosphere in space, so you don't hear any sound. Sound can't pass through any medium.
So could you imagine if like you could take your helmet off in space? Then
Yeah, you would hear nothing.
you hear nothing.
Yeah.
Could you hear other people talk?
I guess not. I don't know. Because it says there's no atmosphere in space, which means that sound has no medium or way to travel to be heard. So even if someone was talking, I don't think you would be able to hear it. Because it's not going to travel. Like here on Earth, I talk, my vocal cords move, they make sounds.
Right, they
the sounds
vibrate.
travel through the air, hit your ears, and you hear me talking. But if there's no air for the sounds to
There's
travel
literally
through,
nothing.
then I don't think you would hear anything. I would just be moving my mouth.
So
and
every space movie where you hear their engine is fake.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to. I mean, you might be able to hear like when there's explosions and shit happening, like muffled sounds. I don't really know. I don't think
We'd have to
you
go to
can.
space.
We'd have to go to space.
Schedule
I
our
guess.
trip.
Cool fact number 2 is the hottest planet in our solar system is 450 degrees Celsius. I don't know what that equates to in Fahrenheit. You could look it up real quick, but it's Venus. Venus is the hottest planet in the solar system and has an average surface temperature of around 450 degrees Celsius. Interestingly, Venus is not the closest planet to the sun. Mercury is closer, but because Mercury has no atmosphere to regulate temperature, it has a very large temperature fluctuation.
So 450 degrees Celsius, real quick, is 842 degrees Fahrenheit. So
It's pretty hot.
you can get a good tan.
So when we're complaining about it being 95, like we really don't have any room to talk.
Yeah.
800 and what? 45?
842.
Oh
But then
my
again, no one
God.
lives there, so like,
That's true.
I mean, if someone lives there, by all means, good for you.
Fact number 3 is there may be life on Mars. Of all of the planets in our solar system, apart from Earth, Mars is the only one most likely to be hospitable to life. In 1986, NASA found what they thought may be fossils of microscopic living things in a rock discovered from Mars. Which, if anyone out there has seen the movie Life, that's basically the plot of the movie Life, which is fucking crazy.
By the way, fuck that. Like, if that shit happens, like, that spaceship can go fuck themselves.
yeah.
I'm shooting missiles at you from Earth.
Me and Taya saw that in the theaters, and to this day, that movie scares the shit out of Taya. Like, it
Dude,
freaks
it
her out.
bothers me too.
It's a weird movie.
Because
to
then they
watch.
land in the ocean, and
Yeah,
the
and
fisherman
now
comes,
things here.
opens it, and it's like, well, we're all fucked.
And now we're dead. Fact number 4 is nobody knows how many stars are in space. The sheer size of space makes it impossible to accurately predict just how many stars we have. Right now, scientists and astronomers use the number of stars only within our galaxy, the Milky Way, to estimate. The number is between 200 and 400 billion stars, and they are estimated to be billions of galaxies, so the stars in space are really completely uncountable.
Right. So if there's that many billions of galaxies, how many millions of other habitable planets are there with species of
Potentially a lot. So, and I think I had read one time that there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on all of the beaches on Earth.
Yeah. And we don't even know how many stars are. It's an estimate of how many stars. We could count all the sand on Earth.
I guess you could.
That would be a terrible job.
Yeah, hard job. Number
Where are we
5.
gonna put it all?
Halley's Comet won't orbit past Earth again until 2061. Discovered in 1705 by Edmund Halley, the famous comet was last seen in 1986 and is only seen once every 75 to 76 years. So we're going to be dead the next... Well, we won't be dead. We'll be
Only
around.
41 years, man.
I mean, we might be dead. I don't know.
We could very well be dead, but I don't hope to be alive.
For whatever
in
reason,
41
I
years.
thought it was like 75 to 76 years from now, but
I'll still be alive.
it's 2061.
I'll be 101.
Dude, who knows? Maybe we'll get like really good, medical technology and like nanobots, and they'll just inject nanotechnology into you that like fixes
You know
up
what?
from
With
the
how
inside.
with how stupid the human race is, we'll all be dead in the next 20 years.
Maybe.
Let's be real.
Number 6 is a full NASA spacesuit costs $12 million. I did not know that. Wow. 70% of that cost is for the backpack and control module.
You just imagine how much money was flushed into NASA back in the space race.
A lot.
Like, I mean, we got rid of NASA for a couple of years
Yeah.
here in the
For
2000s.
a reason. Everyone's like, why are we spending that much money on space?
Right, because it was all taxpayer
Yeah.
funded, and now everyone's like, we don't want to fund NASA anymore. We've been to the moon. And
Yeah.
I'm
Everyone's
sitting
like-
here going, let's fund NASA. Like,
Everyone's like, oh, cool. We space. Like, we have people who are starving here on Earth, and there's wars and stuff happening. Like, I need to pay my rent.
I'm like, yeah, well,
Which is fine, but, like,
we want to send someone to Mars.
space is cool.
So.
Fact number 7 is neutron stars can spin 600 times per second. Pretty crazy. There's a bunch of other stuff.
Imagine
under
losing
there,
gravity on a star. You just have a bunch of like magma go flying off a star into space.
Oh, like a solar flare. Those things are terrifying.
Yeah, but like, say the sun just quit moving. You know, like how if Earth quit moving, like we just stopped on a dime.
Yeah.
We'd literally be like thrown past Pluto. Like, imagine the sun did that. Like, we're all dead anyways, so it would be fine. But like,
Do
you
you
just
ever
see
see
like
those-
magma go flying by. You're like, oh shit.
Do you ever see those dumb Instagram posts where it's like, what would you do if this happened? And it's like a picture of like a giant asteroid like half the size of Earth like colliding with Earth. And it's like, what do you mean, what would I do? I'd fucking die. That's what I would do.
One,
Like,
we'd probably all be like vaporized.
yeah, like, I'm not going to have time to think about, oh my God, what am I going to do to survive this?
I'd get
No,
on a
I'm dead.
skateboard and try and ride the wave that's about to hit me of this shit.
Fact number 8 is there may be a planet made completely out of diamonds.
Oh.
That's pretty fucking crazy.
Imagine the rich motherfucker that's going to find that.
Research from Yale University scientists suggests that a rocky planet called 55 Cancri E, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce that, which has a radius twice Earth's and a mass 8 times greater, may have a surface made up of graphite and diamond. It's 40 light years away, but visible to the naked eye in the constellation of Cancer.
So
Interesting.
we could go outside and look at the diamond planet
Made up of diamonds. That's insane.
and be like, listen, one day some bastard's going to get there.
Oh, some rich guy's gonna fly there first and like set up shop and then charge people like trillions of dollars to get some of the diamonds from that planet.
and then
Hands
some
down.
other rich guy's just going to blow it up. And,
Yeah, there'll be wars fought over it. I'm calling it now.
and then diamonds will be, obsolete, and everyone will be like, great.
Like, yeah, well, you don't have a space diamond, so Matt, if you don't propose to me with a space diamond, this fucking marriage is off. All right.
all right, well,
Matt's like, well, I can't get to fucking
living
space.
that
so-
single life.
All right. Fact number 9: the footprints on the moon will be there for 100 million years. The moon has no atmosphere, which means there's no wind to erode the surface and no water to wash the footprints away. This means that the footprints of the Apollo astronauts, along with spacecraft prints, rover prints, and discarded material, will be there for millions of years.
So imagine being like Neil Armstrong, like Buzz Aldrin, those guys that, walked on the moon. And you're like, my footprint will be there till the end of humanity.
Yeah.
And then a fucking asteroid or like meteor just hits right there
On
and you're
your
like,
footprint.
you
You're like,
motherfucker.
damn it!
I gotta go back.
I gotta go back now.
You gotta put a foot on the moon.
Fact number 10: one day on Venus is longer than a year. Now, this one kind of cooked my brain when I was reading it. Venus has a slow axis rotation, which takes 243 Earth days to complete its day. The orbit of Venus around the sun is 225 Earth days, making a year on Venus 18 days less than a day on Venus. Isn't that confusing?
So a year on Venus.
Because it takes, for it to rotate the planet, to rotate on its
Right.
axis, takes 243 Earth days. But for it to go around the sun, it takes 225 Earth days. So it takes longer for it to rotate once on its axis than it does for it to orbit around the sun.
So we'd all be like dead on Venus.
That's
Well,
so
no.
weird.
It's just the same. It's a year. A year is a year.
Yeah.
No, because our year is.
It would seem to us like a year, but the Venus would have rotated one time.
Right.
Which, on Earth, that's a day, is one axis rotation, right?
I thought,
And then us orbiting around the sun once is a year.
right. I don't know. Space.
Space, man.
Now I'm all
you
fucked
were
up.
looking at me like, how to fucking know?
I think
facts-
that's true.
Yeah.
We can only hope.
You're like, I think that's true. I don't know. Fact number 11. Oh, here we go. In 3.75 billion years, the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxies will collide. The Andromeda galaxy is approaching the Milky Way, where our solar system is, at a rate of around 110 kilometers per second. That's 68 miles per second. And eventually the two will collide to form a giant elliptical galaxy. So I don't know what happens when galaxies collide. That sounds kind of crazy.
Right.
Nothing good, probably.
Probably
for us.
the end of the world as we know it.
Yeah. This is nuts, this one. Number 12 is if two pieces of the same type of metal touch in space, they will permanently bond. So this incredible fact is also known as cold welding, and it happens because the atoms of two pieces of metal have no way of knowing they are separate. This doesn't happen on Earth because of the air and water found between the two pieces. So if you just touched like two metal pipes together, they would just join.
You'd see me in space just touching all metal kinds of shit together. I'd be like, this is awesome!
Making sculptures. Like, I'm the best welder ever.
And then everyone on my crew would be like, yo, you just fucked us. We're not going home now.
Like,
I'd be
so our spaceship is fucked now. So thank you.
as we're all floating in space, and I'm like, look at this shit, though! It's dope!
Number 13 is there is floating water in space. Astronomers have found a massive water vapor cloud which holds 140 trillion times the mass of water in the Earth's oceans, somewhere around 10 billion light years away, making it the largest discovery of water ever found.
Yo, imagine instead of an asteroid hitting the Earth, a
It's just a
massive
cloud of water.
just comes crashing down.
140 trillion times the mass of water in all of the Earth's oceans.
Oh, yeah, we would be trillions of feet deep.
That's so crazy to me. It's just floating around out there.
But I think I'd rather drown like that than get hit by an asteroid, to be honest.
I wouldn't.
I think
you're
it's-
just going to get vaporized.
I mean, you would die from the pressure of the water anyways. But, like, it would be cool to look up. Instead of, like, seeing like, a flaming ball of an asteroid, you just see, like, a ball of water. You're like, well,
And it takes
Yep.
up the whole sky. You're like, oh, this is not great.
I blotted out the sun. I was getting a good tan today.
Number 14 is the largest known asteroid is 600 miles wide. Discovered by Italian astronomer Giuseppe Piazzi in 1801, the dwarf planet Ceres was the first and largest object to be considered an asteroid. It is located in the asteroid belt between the orbits of Mars and Jupiter and accounts for 33% of the entire asteroid belt's mass. So it's basically, they thought it was a planet. They thought it was a dwarf planet. But now they know it's just an asteroid in the asteroid belt. It's 600 miles wide.
They're like, let's name this a planet. Like, nah, that's just a
No,
rock.
that's just a big rock.
That's a big rock that we want to stay far away from.
All right, number 15. The moon was once a piece of the Earth. The theory is that when Earth was a relatively young planet, it was struck by a giant object, and this collision broke a piece of the Earth away to create the moon. This piece then began to orbit the Earth as a result of its gravitational pull. It's pretty cool. I think I learned that in school, actually.
So that would have to go in hand in hand and kind of with like the Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. Like the chaos in the universe of shit
Right.
just colliding into each other and pieces breaking off and forming planets and all that kind of shit. Yeah, nuts.
Because isn't like Jupiter or Saturn, like one of those, doesn't it have like 6 moons?
Yeah, I think Saturn has multiple moons, I think. Because like Europa, I think, is one of Saturn's
Yeah.
moons, and they think that that one might have water on it somewhere underneath the icy surface or something.
Right.
Number 16, the sun's mass makes up 99.86% of the solar system. Made of 3/4 hydrogen and helium for most of its remaining mass, the sun accounts for 99.86% of the mass in our solar system, with a mass of around 330,000 times that of Earth.
Yeah, we're small.
It's big.
It's really big.
This one's cool. I did know about this. I don't know if you've ever heard about the volcano on Mars called Olympus Mons. Have you ever heard of that? So there's a volcano on Mars called Olympus Mons that's 3 times the size of Mount Everest. It's 600 kilometers wide and 21 kilometers high. It's a volcano on Mars that may still be active, according to scientists. It's the tallest peak on any planet. However, they say the Resiflia, I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce that, central peak on the asteroid Vesta is taller at 22 kilometers high. But yeah, so there's a a volcano on Mars that's 3 times the size of Mount Everest.
Which, I mean, before I die, I will be at the base camp of Mount Everest just because I want to be in awe of like that big.
Do you ever want to climb Everest?
Oh, I'll never want to climb it, but I will go to base camp to.
That'd be pretty crazy.
Be at the foot of Mount Everest. Like I think about like, could you imagine? You know, I've talked to my parents about this before. I'm like, could you imagine being like the settlers that came over? You know, if you've ever driven to Colorado from the east, it's just flat, and then you come over one little crest and you just see mountains. Imagine the first people with like, I mean, that's how Denver. You got some asshole that got over and goes, "Yep."
He's like, I think right here's good.
I think here's good. And then you have the other asshole on the other hand that goes, I'm going through the mountains.
Yeah. Good luck, buddy.
Someone, I mean, imagine doing that to like Mount Everest or, you know, that volcano on Mars. Like imagine being the rover growing and then you go over just like a little like sand dune on Mars and you look up and there's just this tower of a mountain and you're like, what?
3 times the size of Everest. And Everest is like what, 29,000 feet high. So it's 3 times that high.
That would be 90,000 feet pretty much.
Wow.
That'd be out of the Earth's atmosphere.
They think it's still active as a volcano.
Dude, imagine if it was out of, like, say that was on Earth. That should probably be out of Earth's atmosphere. So, like, a volcano like that would erupt, and it would just shoot, like, magma into space. It would be just like an asteroid creator.
Whoa.
It'd just be like an asteroid cannon. Like, we could aim it at other alien
An
planets.
asteroid cannon.
Imagine, though?
That'd be fucking crazy.
We're like, okay, wait, don't erupt yet. We're almost in line with Pluto. Boom. Goes off.
So that's all I had for space facts. I talked about time dilation. I talked about my cool space facts. I do have a list of my favorite, or I guess not favorite, but space movies that I have seen. I don't know if you want to run through, talk about some space movies or not.
Yeah, might as well.
Yeah. So you already covered several of them. Interstellar is my favorite space movie of all time. But here's some space movies that I have seen and that I have some sort of an opinion on. Because obviously I haven't seen all of the space movies ever made. Number 1 is Moon. You ever seen Moon?
It doesn't sound...
It's a pretty crazy movie. You should check that out. It's Sam Rockwell, and he's like stationed on the moon, and he's supposed to be there manning some sort of a station all by himself until they come back and do something. And I won't say what the spoiler is, but he discovers like some grand conspiracy that's like beyond what he was told. It's really cool. 2001: A Space Odyssey. You ever seen
that one? Yeah.
That's a trippy fucking movie, dude.
Yeah.
And especially for when it came out, like in the 60s, that's a really weird movie, dude. That's a crazy
really
movie.
weird. But it's one of like people rate that as a great.
Yeah, that's Stanley Kubrick, and that's what people talk about being one of like the best movies ever made. I'm not that high on it. I saw it just so I could see it and be a part of that conversation. I do think it's cool, it's interesting, but like you watch it and you're like, it ends and you're just kind of like, I don't know what to think about what I just saw. It's very weird.
Yeah.
I have on here just written Alien, so the entire Alien franchise. Those are cool space movies, especially if you like.
Again, if we're traveling in space,
killing
we could literally show up to a planet like that. We're like, oh, we could make a life for us here, and then all of a sudden, we stumble across them.
We talked about this a little bit on our movie franchise episode about the Alien movies, like the new ones not being as good as the old ones, but I don't care, dude. Any time they make a new Alien movie, I'm in. Like, show me, oh, the trailer has a spaceship traveling through space and an artificially intelligent like person looking after all the people sleeping in cryotubes, and then they run into a conflict with aliens. I'm sold. I'm watching it.
I'll be there.
I'm gonna be there. I've seen it a million times, but I will watch it again. I don't know. There's just something about that that's just really fascinating.
I think we could. We'll probably want to table the alien talk for another Alien episode because
We could go on like a binge of all the Alien movies and then share our thoughts.
well, aliens are real. That's my thoughts. Maybe not those aliens.
And they also built the pyramids for our buddy Brandon, who's out there.
Whole
listening.
nother episode. Too.
All right, I have also on here Gravity, which I mentioned earlier. That's a
Right.
really cool movie. It's kind of more. It's definitely way less Alien. It's way more The Martian.
Right.
So it's like kind of grounded because it's like space travel that we already have because they're just orbiting the Earth and then like disaster.
It's a more
strikes, they have to
realistic
survive.
space
Yeah.
movie.
I have on here just Star Wars because all the Star Wars movies are obviously
In
space
space.
movies. Interstellar, which is as we already covered at length, it's my favorite one ever. If you've never seen the movie Contact, it's kind of like I'm not sure when it came out. It may have been even in the 90s. It's like the 90s version of Interstellar. It's a really underrated movie. I think you should check out Contact. if you
Yeah, I
ever
don't
get a
think I've ever
chance.
seen that.
It's Jodie Foster, and I'm not really like a big Jodie Foster fan, but that movie is nuts. It's really good. I have on here The Martian. Obviously, we've talked about that. The movie Event Horizon. Have you ever seen
haven't
Event
seen that,
Horizon?
no.
Dude, Event Horizon is almost like if in Interstellar when they go through the black hole, except for they go through the black hole and end up ripping through the fabric of their dimension into another dimension where everything is like horror. It's like a horror space movie, and it is nuts.
See, I don't like horror, so
I don't know if you're gonna want to watch that one.
You already
but
pushed me away.
It is insane, dude. I was not expecting that movie to be that crazy. I have on here Guardians of the Galaxy. That takes place in space. That's the space,
Space
team for
part
the
of
Marvel. Yeah. First Man. You ever seen First Man?
No, I haven't seen
It's the one they made. It's like maybe only 2 years old at this point with Ryan Gosling. He plays.
Was it Buzz Aldrin,
He plays Neil Armstrong.
Neil Armstrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
About the moon landing. It's pretty
Right.
good. It's not great, but it's pretty good. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You ever seen that?
one.
I like that movie. That's funny as hell. Also a great book. Wall-E is just
Great. It's
probably-
a cartoon
It's
of
got to
what
be
could
one of the best
happen to
Pixar
Earth.
movies they've made. It's so good. We rewatched it when Disney Plus came out, and it holds up. It's a great movie.
Well, and it might be on your list, but I'll jump in. You know what movie I also forgot that could be realistic would be Armageddon.
Oh yeah, it's on here. Yeah, Armageddon's great.
You know, the fact that there could be an asteroid that at some point in time we'll have to try and destroy
yeah.
and hopefully send it around the Earth to save humanity. But
Yeah.
I mean, also,
Armageddon's really entertaining.
also at one point, do you go, man, fuck it, let's just all die together?
yeah, like we can't do anything about it, and it's
I
like
mean-
3 weeks away or whatever.
I mean, like literally, what happens if you blow it up? I mean, it's all chance. You could blow it up and
and then a different piece.
a different
hits us
piece
still.
hits, or like the half of it just goes, yeah, right. You know,
Yeah.
you blew that piece away, but I'm
Yeah.
still coming in,
Keeps
and
its course.
you're all still dead.
Another one I have on here, it's less of a space movie, but I guess it applies. See, some of these, when I Googled just space movies to have like a list, some of these I feel like we can have the debate on if it's a space movie or not. Like this one has aliens in it, so I guess you could consider it a space movie, but it takes place on Earth. It's Arrival. Have you seen Arrival?
Arrival's,
It's good.
yeah,
That's a,
kinda
that's a trippy
trippy.
movie. That's a trippy fucking movie. Also, Men in Black. I don't know if you could really categorize that as a space movie.
kind of a
Kinda.
space universe.
It's a
movie,
space universe because
but
like
it's all on Earth.
aliens, they know of aliens existing, and it's this secret government organization that like keeps that under wraps. But it's all takes place here.
But like that,
But
could,
it is a space. I guess it's
that
a
could-
space movie.
yeah.
'cause there's aliens.
I mean, yeah. There's probably aliens that live amongst us.
Yeah.
So like, if a weird person knocks on your door, don't answer.
Ad Astra that just came out last year. Have you ever seen
Yeah,
that?
I've never seen that. No.
I just watched it on HBO not that long ago. It's pretty cool. It's not great, but it's pretty cool.
Is Tron a space movie?
No, because that takes place like inside of a video game.
I was gonna say, isn't that like
It's
inside of that?
Yeah,
that
it
racing
looks
game?
kind of like it takes place in space, but it's like inside of the. I haven't actually really seen Tron.
Oh,
I've seen
you know
bits
what's
and
a,
pieces,
a
but-
weird space movie, and it could be on your list again. Have you ever seen Ender's Game?
Yeah, and I've read the book too. And I've read actually like the Ender's Game like quadrilogy, I guess you would call it, the quartet of books, and I've seen the movie, and the movie is not as good as the book, I will say, which I know that's like a cliche thing to say, but that is a cool.
But
space
talk about like
concept,
another
yeah.
realistic opportunity, obviously far future, that we're trying, or Starship Troopers. It's kind of the same thing.
Oh,
We go
yeah.
and invade a planet with bugs,
Yeah.
and we have to try and kill the bugs. Starship Troopers as cheesy and dumb as the
I
movie
haven't
might
seen
be,
all
it's
of it. I've only
fucking-
seen
I love
parts
that
of it,
movie.
but everyone seems to love Starship
I love that
Troopers.
movie.
Star Trek, obviously that whole franchise. I got Thor Ragnarok on here because a lot of that takes place in space. Passengers, which we've covered at length, and Armageddon, which we've already talked about. And then the last couple are Avatar, one of the best movies ever,
Another alien.
and
movie.
Life, which we talked about a second ago. But dude, here's one that was on the list that I totally forgot about that I have rewatched recently for the first time since I saw it as a kid, and it's awesome. Have you ever seen Treasure Planet, the animated movie?
Yeah, with like the pirate spaceship.
Yes.
Yes.
Dude, it's so good.
Yes.
It holds up, man. That's like one of the best animated Disney movies that they ever made. It's awesome. So anyway, that was my little rant on space movies.
All those animated movies from when we were kids held up great.
You always like it's a nerve-wracking thing to watch them now as an adult because you're like, I hope this holds up. I hope it's not like
Yeah.
bad. And I just was remembering it as a good movie, but that one held up, dude. It's a great movie.
Well, it's like space. It'll always be there.
Yep.
What
What
if-
that?
What would happen if space disappeared?
Whoa. It's like rip the joint. Hey, bro. What happened if now check this out. Space disappeared. You're like,
Dude, but I
everyone's
mean,
like, whoa.
but like, what if the universe is a part of something else? You
Well,
know?
like at the end of I forget which Men in Black movie it is, but they like keep panning out and zooming out and zooming out, and it turns out like our universe is a marble in this alien's hand, and
Right,
he's like
and he's, like,
rolling
rolling
marbles
it.
and then puts them into a little bag. I'm like, oh fuck.
I mean,
like, oh, God,
our
that just
universe
got
could be
crazy,
a
yeah.
universe within a universe within, you know, space, dude.
Space, man.
We could literally talk about space if we were smart enough on it for
Yeah, and like I said,
hours.
this is just two guys knowing literally no scientific evidence about space
But being
whatsoever, but just
fascinated
being
by it.
fascinated by it and just reading lots of stuff on it and
Wishing that
regurgitating
all of
those
it was
facts and
real.
yeah, wishing that all the crazy shit was actually real, except for Event Horizon because fuck that was scary.
yeah. I'll never watch it, but
Yeah. Any other thoughts on space before we wrap this up?
no. Hopefully, one day we can all go to space. I think that'd be sick.
Maybe we could record a podcast on a space flight someday. If this podcast
We'll
is
be
still
the-
going.
We'll
by
be
that
the
point.
first ever.
No, Joe Rogan will be the first.
No,
ever.
no, no. We're going to be bigger than Joe Rogan because we're going to get sponsored by Body Armor and Coca-Cola, Michelob Ultra.
I think, I don't know. He's going to beat us there, I have a feeling.
So should we?
Although we're younger. We
we're-
have the jump
we
on
might
there.
outlive him,
Yeah.
but he's got more money.
Way more money.
He's got more viewers.
Yeah.
He's got a bigger reach to like Elon Musk. Like maybe if Elon Musk gets a hold of this, like
Yeah.
if any of our listeners out there are close relatives or friends with Elon Musk, you
He
know,
doesn't have time to come to our podcast, I promise.
I don't think he. No, I'm not asking to come to our podcast, but I'm willingly to.
Oh,
I'll get on a spaceship and go to space
Oh,
for
yeah.
him
And then record a podcast in
and
space.
record a podcast in space.
Yeah. And he'll be like, I'm pretty sure this thing's not going to crash, but you guys can get after it up there.
Yeah, I mean, hey, put me on like the flying Tesla or whatever that you want to launch into space, and we'll do a podcast in the Tesla.
How insane is it that there's a Tesla floating through space right now?
How insane is it that we could do a podcast on the Tesla in space? Even more insane than the fact that there's a floating one in space. Elon, we know you're listening. Hit us up.
Just throwing it out there. All right. Well, unless you have anything else to add, I think that about wraps up our space conversation. So I hope you all out there have enjoyed our conversation. Again, like we've said many times, this is the Just Browsing podcast. We like to talk about just a bunch of different random topics, movies, TV shows, space movies, sports, whatever it is. If you have a cool topic you want us to talk about, please write in, email in, go
a
comment
comment.
on YouTube.
Facebook.
Yeah, we're on Apple Podcast, Spotter.
Spotter.
Yeah, we're on Spotter.
We got a spotter.
Spotify, Podbean.
Podbean.
Yeah. So anywhere out there that you want to get your podcast, go leave a comment, rate, subscribe.
And we'll be back for you next week.
We'll probably be back next with maybe like a NBA playoffs.
Maybe another
update.
NBA playoff
Yeah.
update.
Because round 1 is officially done now. So
Round 1 is officially done. Round 2 is in full swing
yeah,
already because the East has already played multiple games.
yeah. The West
But-
is kind of a little bit behind because the Lakers and the Clippers advanced real early, and then the Nuggets
Nuggets
and
and-
the Rockets took a
went
while.
game
They went
sevens.
game 7. So yeah, those ones are just getting started. But yeah, we'll probably be back with an NBA playoffs update. Hopefully, maybe with Brandon,
Maybe with Brandon.
with our special guest. But yeah.
Yeah. We'll,
Thanks for listening to our space talk.
We'll talk to you tomorrow next week.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.